Hi, my name is Natalie Giso, and today I'll be presenting on positive and Buddhist psychology. Positive psychology emphasizes on healthy functioning through positive emotions such as happiness. Research finds that certain traits help improve the cardiovascular health through positive mood and happiness. 3 pillars to positive psych are positive subjective experience, positive traits, and positive institution. Positive subjective happiness includes life satisfaction, how you are satisfied with your life or not, as well as flow, which is the engagement in activity, which would be a characteristic of a creative person. For example, an artist or a pianist, as well as intrinsic striving, which is your inner motivation other than an external motivator. Money would be an example of an external motivator. It's like money doesn't make you happy by itself. The way you get the money should be the internal motivator to get the external motivator, if I'm making myself clear. As well as a meaningful life. For example, helping others and doing good for other people. Next would be positive traits, such as optimism, thinking that something good is going to happen rather than something bad, being positive about things. Having values and strengths, such as courage and wisdom, and resiliency, which is having the strength to go through stressful situations. Positive institutions would be the workplace and schools. The workplace would be a positive institution because if you create a positive environment for your workers and for yourself, you become more motivated to do better. Therefore, it increases sales or just the financial bottom line. And schools have the potential to support children's development. An example of the promise of positive psychology would be the story between an old Cherokee and his grandson, where there are 2 wolves, the good and compassionate one, and the other one would be the greedy and evil, full of flawed one. And the story goes by the grandson asking the Cherokee which wolf will win, and him responding with the one you feed. So basically he's giving an example that you're either good or bad. Everyone has both, but depending on what you strive for and what you feed is what you will become and what you will be. Buddhist psychology represents a model in development for psychology. It represents this through meditation, which fosters healthy growth. It emphasizes on universal potential for the human condition. It teaches non-judgment as well as emphasizing on change, transition, and the experience of the self. Buddhism and personality psychology. Carl Jung's ideas as well as Buddha's ideas on common interests were different because Buddhism goes way deeper into questioning the ego and the unconscious. Concepts such as the self are very important ideas in the theories of personality and psychotherapy. There's a difference between a humanistic approach and the Buddhist approach. The humanistic approach is basically when you become aware of your true self and you follow its guidance, while the Buddhist approach focuses more on mental health, discipline, and restraint. There are 4 noble truths in Buddhism. The first is the dukkha, which means that there is suffering. The second would be the origin of suffering, which includes craving or attachment. The third would be the end of suffering, which means detaching from the craving. And the fourth would be the Eightfold Path, in which you recognize that suffering exists. The first noble truth, there is suffering, which is the dukkha, which is the fundamental lesson that there is suffering. Suffering includes harmony, painfulness, and frustration. This truth permits suffering into the consciousness rather than repressing it. The second noble truth is the origin of suffering, which is the craving or attachment. Attachment means craving a variety of things, whether it be physical objects or the self, and this is the source of suffering. The root of the problem is that we are ignorant. We are deluded in what would make us happy, and so we crave the wrong things. An example would be addiction, whereas if craving a drug can be eliminated, the suffering of not having it will go away. There are 3 kinds of desires. There's sensory pleasure, to become, to continue to exist, and to get rid of something. The third noble truth is the end of suffering, which is the detachment from the craving, which in turn will end suffering, such as material objects and possessiveness of others. The fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path, and is the method for achieving an end to suffering through an accurate perception, right intentions, being true and direct but respectful with one's speech, being respectful of others, as well as being consistent with one's ethics, having the right mindfulness, and being fully involved in the moment. The middle way is a path in which avoids the excess, either too little or too much. Concepts in Buddhism are included in personality theories, like the self or the ego, behavior, emotions, and social relationships. The self or the ego. Positive thinking of oneself predicts positive outcomes. One's self-esteem requires acceptance of oneself. Western and Buddhism beliefs are different. An example of Western beliefs is Carl Rogers' concept of conditional positive regard, which refers to self-esteem being earned and being able to lose. While Buddhism concentrates on self-compassion, which includes treating oneself with kindness, they believe that we are constantly changing and there's no permanent self. Behavior is produced by thought and intention. An example of this would be karma. Karma entails that actions have consequences, whether they be bad or good. So if you do a good action, you'll get good karma. If you do bad action, you'll get bad karma. Emotions can interfere with growth, such as anger and even love. Love interferes with accurate perception of reality because it links positive emotions to another person, making us forget that true happiness comes from within. Emotions should be guided by the middle way as well, avoiding excess, not too much or too little. Social relationships include compassion as well, which is the central concept in Buddhism, which is spoken about in the video by the Dalai Lama, The Seeds of Love and Compassion, portrayed by a mother breastfeeding her newborn as a symbol of love. It includes peace and community as well. Meditation is a fundamental practice in Buddhism, and it enhances serenity and well-being. There are two types of meditation. There's concentrative and mindfulness. Concentrative focuses on breath, sounds, or image, while mindfulness allows thoughts to appear and observes them with no judgment. The goal of meditation is pure consciousness, and to be able to reach a state of nirvana, which is the highest state one can attain. It's a state of enlightenment. Buddhist and positive psychology have to do with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because in order to reach any of these states that they talk about, one must first fulfill the basic needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs talks about five needs. The first one being the basic needs, which include food, water, shelter, and sex. The second, the security needs. Third, social needs. Fourth, esteem. And fifth would be self-actualization. In order to move on through all of these needs, you must first go by basic needs. Fulfill that one, then you go to the second, and so on and so forth. The lower levels must be met before moving on to the higher levels. Once they are all met, you are able to move to the self-actualization, which is a person's full potential. It states that everyone is capable of reaching this level, but many people don't reach this level because their process is interrupted at the lower levels. For example, divorce can interrupt the process. In the video, The Seeds of Love and Compassion, Dalai Lama, he talks about our first pleasurable experience coming from our mother's care. He gives the example, as I previously mentioned, of a mother providing her newborn with milk. This biological factor gives us the feeling of trust, therefore giving us the feeling of joyfulness. In the video, he also states that life starts with the maximum affection from our parents. This pertains to children because those who have that affection are more stable and secure over those who lack the affection during their childhood. An example would be orphans and those who have experienced abuse in their households at an early age and carry those problems with them throughout their life. Parents who show compassion plant the seed of love in their children. In turn, a compassionate mind creates a positive element and affectionate home. On the other hand, anger and jealousy create no peace and an unhappy atmosphere. As I mentioned earlier in the video, Buddhism and Carl Rogers' ideas on common interests were different. Buddhism further questions the value of the ego and the unconsciousness. As for the psychoanalytic theory, Buddhism greatly impacted this theory, especially through the therapeutic practices such as meditation. Overall, the video states when a child is raised in a happy, compassionate home full of love, they are more able to become autonomous individuals capable of that compassion. Unlike those who are raised in an unhappy, abusive atmosphere, and to have a harder time being able to reach autonomy or have a good sense of their self. In conclusion, childhood is the base of self-compassion. It must all start from there. Therefore, having compassion throughout childhood makes you better able to be compassionate as an adult. Thank you. My name is Natalie once again, and I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a little something.